The working class rising up. This is the ruling class punching down.
My day, bigger your day.
First rule of gladiator school, bro. Don't punch down.
Charging into a goblin.
Hail Trump!
The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
Control your own body.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
We can fight the entire grinding system. Nobody can. But together, everybody can.
I did nothing wrong.
Hello and welcome to Did Nothing Wrong Live, the show that cuts through the noise and helps you make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff, and with me are Karl and Jay McKenzie. In today's episode, we will discuss the difference between a Roman salute and a Nazi one, as well as the purge of top Defense Department officials, including the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Elon and Trump's rapidly cratering approval ratings. Keep listening to learn more, and remember to smash those like and subscribe buttons. So guys, did you celebrate yesterday?
I did.
You did?
What's that?
Celebrate. It was a holiday.
Oh,
okay.
I
Yeah,
missed this.
holiday. It was
What was it?
Happy
What was
Enrique Tarrio's back in jail day.
One of those great holidays. We love them.
Gotta love those kind of holidays. We need all of those. Apparently, former, current, who can really say, leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, got a little handsy with a counter-protester yesterday on the National Mall in Washington and found himself on the receiving end of a pair of handcuffs from the park police in a clip that went extremely viral, which was, kind of nice to see. You thought the guy was turning his life around, maybe making some better choices, and unfortunately, sad story with that. But
Yeah, just got right back into the bracelets. Seems to be an ongoing theme, though, for the pardoned domestic terrorists of J6.
No kidding.
A lot of them like to diddle little kids, it appears. A lot of them like making death threats against significant others. A lot of them like putting their hands on protesters and going back to jail. Yeah, it seems like a running theme within the old J6 crew. So
yeah, they got a second chance. Here they are getting second chances and blowing it. I mean, what are they always saying about criminal justice and how these people are just being coddled and they'll never learn if you don't throw the book at them? Guess we're seeing a great example.
Well, the ones who aren't in jail are currently, at least a good group of them, are at CPAC, and they've done some interviews with Steve Bannon, and now they are pushing for reparations for the J6 Patriots.
Reparations for the J6ers.
Quote,
Here I am
unquote.
thinking reparations.
Yes.
Wow, that sounds kind of woke. Oh wait, no, for J6.
No.
Gotcha.
Well, don't forget that now Trump has said too that the J6 choir, so the coup choir, is going to be performing at the Kennedy Center here at some point soon. So we're just through the looking glass, I think is the best way to put it. But also, guys like Torrio and other people who make up that movement, as we're seeing, can't control themselves. So some of them are taking themselves out of circulation forever. A couple of these guys have gotten shot by law enforcement, and some of them have tried to do some other very interesting things. So, like, some of these guys are taking themselves out of circulation like it's, reacting to COVID.
It's a little strange, though, when you look at Tarrio, because, it came out that he had been an FBI informant, shocker, for years.
No kidding.
And that, of course, kind of dented his persona among the Proud Boys and people on the right, but he still got the support. He still went to jail. Let's hail all the J6ers. But now we got a situation where Kash Patel somehow has been confirmed as the FBI director. So now Tarrio can probably go back to being an FBI informant, but which side is the FBI on? Who are they reporting to? Who are they answering to? Yeah.
We're going to be lucky if he doesn't end up being like an assistant FBI director or something after this is all over, really.
Yeah.
He's
there's a real
FBI
chance he gets a
before. Why
position
not?
of true power, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that's actually, yes, I celebrated, but, that may be short-lived looking at what they've said.
We take these little celebrations where we can, but, Jay, you're right. It's very much how did the guy who was on QAnon podcasts recently go to being in charge of the FBI?
And oh, by the way, he's not divesting his stock options with a Chinese company because he just doesn't want to. because
Right.
well, the stock hasn't fully matured, so he's just not gonna do it. And
What, you want him to lose money?
then
Yeah.
Republicans said, "Fine, okay, confirmed anyway."
That's cash, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cash.
What are you
Literally,
gonna
cash
do?
Patel.
Cash money,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mhm.
we're now in the era of
Dollar,
cash
dollar,
money
bill,
at the FBI. And
And we're
so
so tough on China, and these
Mhm.
tariffs are very
So tough.
important and necessary. But no, let's let Cash's stock mature. He's gotta make that bank.
He's
He's
got
working hard.
car payments to think about, and probably buys lots of expensive QAnon merchandise. Although I'm sure he probably gets a break on all of it. It's getting crazy over there. You mentioned CPAC, and there was another interesting thing that came out of CPAC during Steve Bannon's speech. He decided to ape what Elon Musk had done on Inauguration Day and throw what some are calling, your heart out to the world. Some would call a Roman salute. Others seem to think it's a Nazi salute. It really, I guess, kind of depends on who you're asking, but wow, this is the second really high profile Trump influencer supporter to pull this move in public recently. Is this the new okay sign for these guys, or what are we doing here?
Well, that's just it, right? And let's actually look back. This is the fourth, I believe, person now. So we've got Bannon, we've Elon, and then we have a couple others. This is not new, right? Like this
Right.
is the same thing. Yeah, like you said, the okay symbol, or even like the rune, right? Like everyone remembers the nice little Nazi rune stage design that they used at one point recently. And it's all the plausible deniability, right? Like it's the same thing as any of this, where it's an irony wrapped poison pill, right?
Right.
Like they know that if they get busted before they have this normalized, it's a lot harder for them.
And even some of the hardcore types on their side are starting to find this a little uncomfortable. Here's Nick Fuentes talking about how he kind of finds this a little bit disturbing now. Check it out. When Nick Fuentes kind of thinks that's a little much, and maybe I'm not quite used to having everybody in the room on my side at this point. They may not want to admit that it's a Nazi symbol, but the Nazis definitely seem to look at it and say, oh, yeah, that's us. That's us.
Well, it's hard to split the two, right? Like, for most Americans, they have very little education in the language of like the academic study of extremism and all this. So like for them, they're seeing it and they see a knot, right? And there are definitely, you can go down the steps of clarity and how micro you want to get on it, whether it's, the Roman salute, or whether it's a neo-Nazi salute, or whether it's a Nazi salute. And, it's tough because you do want to be accurate and you want to be clear on what it is. In this case, it's exactly what most people think it is, right? Like
Right.
this is this is trolling and irony poisoned normalization. And, I think looking at the reactions we're already seeing after Bannon did what he did and after the other speaker did one, there's a real line, right? And people are starting to see that it's been crossed. And I
Right.
think, it's really interesting because the argument now is turning to, well, what do we do?
Yeah.
They've shown us what they are. How do we do that? And so that's actually shifting it. And with someone like Fuentes, for example, right? Is that someone who's scared that everyone else is in the room is on the same side? Or is that someone scared that they're going to blow the lid too early and not be able to achieve what that R means with enough solidification to actually pull it off? And like, I don't really care because he's a Nazi, but like, it's an interesting point to be made, right? That like the right's use of trolling in this way to kind of like inoculate themselves, their followers from,
Right.
This kind of like, well, you're a Nazi, that's pretty tried and true. So it's really interesting now seeing the progression from Musk a month ago. Then you have Calvin Robinson. Then you have this new spate. That's accelerating, but the pushback is as well. And people really aren't doing well with this, and it's across the spectrum. So the more we have a symbol that most people, even if they're not politically quote unquote plugged in, see as an embodiment of evil and of like one of the, like really recognizable signs of it. I don't know how you pull out of that without things on their part getting really out of control, because they're running themselves into a corner where there are only a few options for them to contain pushback from that symbol, from their actions, and so the rhetorical tricks aren't working now in some capacity because they've blown past it.
Right. And I liked what you said about we've gotten to the point where we're not really so much talking about the specifics of whether this person is a Nazi or whether this person is a fascist, because as we've all talked about, online in, DMs, that's not really the interesting question right now.
No.
The interesting question is like, how do we stop this?
Yep.
It's obvious that these guys are at very best authoritarian and they want bad things for this country. So what do we do in that case to make sure that they don't get what they want any more than they already have? Because to me, that's the really interesting question right now.
No, exactly. And I for me, the other part of that question as a sociologist, that's really, really the core of the question is, what are the systems at play and how do you disrupt those so you shut down the actual power behind the personal decisions people are making to either accept or not accept the fascist vision? And because those are giant amplifiers for this. And so we have to know the extent of the systemic thing as much as we understand that this isn't, this isn't normal. It's a fascism problem. It's a Nazi problem. It's an authoritarian problem. We have to be able to put all of that together to make the cohesive picture that you need to actually start to effectively shut it down.
Right.
And it's starting to happen. People are getting some of this, and we're starting to see the actions that start to layer together and form meshes of pushback. But that's coming from people really acknowledging the ground we stand on right now, not where we were 10 years ago, not where we were 6 months ago, and not where we may be in 6 to 10 months, from now. It's really centered on, okay, we need to know the branches, the extent, the weight, the gravity of these things, so we can actually assess them correctly to address them and then find the resources and the ways to break them apart. And it's hard work. It's tough work. It's huge work. It's, this is the stuff though that we have to get more comfortable with. It's a hard place to be.
Griff, you mentioned the OK symbol, which they started in 2017. It was very much an alt-right thing that started on 4chan, and the people who started it are still around and still part of MAGA world. And they loved it because they could get pictures of Obama or Biden or Hillary doing okay, because sometimes when you're speaking, that is
relatively common gesture.
It's a relatively common gesture. And it was their symbol because they could say, LOL, you dumb libs. It's just an OK symbol. What are you talking about? But it was a white supremacist symbol. It was also a commonly used symbol that plenty of people do that have nothing to do with that movement. And it worked perfectly for them. And this is really the exact same thing. It's just with a Sig Heil. They know it's a Nazi salute. They know. They're not idiots. They know exactly what they're doing. Bannon, I listened to Bannon at CPAC this week, and he's talking to everyone and doing his usual stick, and got the J6ers. He even has Liz Truss there trying to start a UK version of Doge. The woman will not go quietly. She's decided to sell out completely to the far right and the fascists because she doesn't want to be the prime minister that only lasted 10 days or something.
Yeah, less than the averge head of lettuce, I believe. Was
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
But the thing is, and on that, when he's at CPAC, Bannon said, "Oh, was that a Nazi salute?" And the crowd goes, No, of course not. And they all know it is, and he knows it is, and they think it's funny, and he knows the opposition, liberals, Democrats, people on the left are listening, and he loves it because you hate it. It doesn't matter what it symbolizes, what it means. He doesn't care, and it doesn't even necessarily correspond to his exact belief system, because Bannon traditionally, has been pretty pro-Israel, and a lot of these guys have been and still are very pro-Israel. So you can hem and haw and say, well, they're not neo-Nazis, or they are, or maybe it's this term. Look, I kind of just don't care, because it's a Nazi salute. They are fascist. Whether or not they want to go eradicate all the Jewish people, which some of them do.
Yes.
These guys are very anti-Semitic. They very much believe that, hey, they can live with the Jews who agree with them, but the ones that don't, they don't care what happens to them. That is the version of reality they subscribe to. So
exactly.
Whatever they actually believe, they know what they're doing. It's becoming more common, and it's desensitizing us. It's normalizing this. It's making it okay for fascists to do Nazi salutes. And that is their intention. That is their goal. And really it boils down to, this makes you mad, so they're going to keep doing it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and it's the whole thing that this has been the track and ball forever with them, right? Like, it's never one thing, right? Like, Nazis use a host of things at the same time, like, to try and achieve maximally, because it's really about power, not about belief necessarily, if that makes sense, because they believe what they're saying for sure. But some of them also, high level, both historically and now, are only there because they wanted the power. They don't actually, like the horrifying white power violence, the horrifying genocide, all of that is a subsidiary to them having and holding the power, right? So
and that's where you're talking about a guy like Jack Posobiec, who will gladly use Nazis to get what he wants. He will gladly direct Nazis in a certain direction to create a certain media narrative so he can achieve his goals of getting dragged along on, U.S. Defense Department trips to Ukraine.
Exactly. No, exactly. And fascism at some level is the ultimate opportunism, right? Like, it's an ideology that allows the worst people in the room who have the most drive and are loud into true power. And like, that's the thing. Ultimately, history tries those people all the same, right? Like, you all go down under the banner of Hugo Boss and the Iron Cross. And that's, I think that's the tough part. People want clarity, but also most people can't do super depth clarity and analysis. They want a simple response. And I think, we're seeing, right?
Let me just say too, like, part of this is that the right has decided, from JD Vance and Elon Musk tweeting about it back and forth about their Doge kids who have admitted that they're racist and white supremacists and saying, no, we're not going to fire them for reasons. They know that the people who are part of this movement have said and done awful things. They will not cancel anyone. They will not let anyone suffer any kind of consequences for racism, misogyny, pretty much, even honestly at this point, rape. They don't care. It doesn't matter as long as supporting person X, Y, or Z keeps their power, maintains their power, or increases it. That's all this is about. And so the next time a scandal hits, and next time we find out something even more depraved and horrible about one of their allies, they'll just say, and their audience will just, I think, go along with it and not ask too many questions. And so, they know that this is about power and consolidating power, and even with the Nazism, the fascism, the symbols, what they're doing, it is accelerating things. It does mean that the extremism will eventually no longer be within their control. And we're already approaching that point.
Mm-hmm.
But if that chaos, if that hate, if whatever they stir up makes it easier for them to keep their hold on power, they can live with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the authoritarian playbook, right? And so I think, we as a country don't do well with cohesive, like, message. Generally, we're not great at it. We need a whole bunch of state, level, like, propaganda and corporate propaganda pushed at us. But this seems to be one of the rare times where we're starting to see that people aren't actually accepting it, right? And there's a vast swath of people who are starting to see this, even within the military, and say, look.
Right. And I take it that means you've seen the footage that's coming out of the town halls that some of these people are having as they go back. We're seeing Republican reps in places like Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which isn't exactly a hotbed of, liberal activism,
one of
calling out their representatives.
Conservative places.
Yeah, Oshkosh is one of the most conservative places, and you saw what we just saw. So you're also seeing that across the country. There are many of these people showing up at town halls and telling their representatives that, hey, you need to fight. Even on the Democratic side of it, they're saying, you need to fight this. Go fight. We'll be behind you. We will be in your corner. And this is some very inspiring rhetoric, I think, in a lot of their cases. This is the kind of thing I think a lot of these people need to see if they're going to get on board with the idea of, let's stop this thing by any means necessary. And the first means is we should probably go out and start acting like the opposition party they elected us to be.
Exactly. I mean, we're starting to see something that looks like popular support for a single message. And the message is no kings.
Yeah.
Right. And that actually is very interesting to see an organic movement that's in about 2 weeks, and really quickly over the last 5 days turned into something that is starting to look like a true social movement. We on this show, and I think publicly, individually, have said, like, this is the beginning of something.
Yeah.
Not a reconfiguration of something old. And, what we're seeing at town halls is a mixture of both Democrats and conservative constituents, apparently getting really angry. And they are angry at what appears to be one thing, which is Elon Musk and Donald Trump's continuing and ongoing gutting of the federal government.
Right.
That sentiment isn't going to change.
And
and we talked about the CBS News poll where Trump had a slight bump. It was the one poll that showed him above 50%.
Yep.
And we talked about why that was, because there was the moment there where people said, oh my God, the government, the federal government, someone in Washington, D.C. is actually doing something.
Right.
And they were excited about that. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. And then the receipts came. And then the consequences, the aftershocks, the stories of them Doge going through and Control F, canceling anything that had the word transition in it, whether or not it was related to trans healthcare or disabled children trying to leave school and enter the workforce. So people are starting to realize that, just doing something isn't good enough. And I think we both know, or we all know that Trump has a built-in base that is just never going to abandon him, which is probably around 30%, give or take. But Elon Musk does not have that.
No.
And I don't think there is any bottom for him. I'm not sure there is a bottom for Tesla's stock price. And we could be finding out where that ends up rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to.
I mean, at some point, Tesla needs to keep selling cars to keep this guy in business, and they're not.
Yeah.
Their sales are off everywhere. Their sales are off globally. We're starting to see these articles in the various automotive papers about people whining about how they're being badly treated because they're driving a Cybertruck, and those stories are coming out every day. And it's like, well, choices are made. You spent $100,000 and you expected people to like you? Especially.
I support all of our listeners who choose to flip off anyone driving a Cybertruck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
sticks and stones, middle fingers don't actually hurt you.
No.
Have you seen, now, so I want to say yesterday or the day before, I saw an article posted. So there's a group now hunting Cybertrucks on the streets with projection systems from their car and projecting everything that Trump and Musk and these people had said. They're projecting Musk with a handgun to the head of Lady Liberty playing Gimme the Loot on the back of these people's car and stuff. And so, we're starting to see organic resistance, right? And, this country, if nothing else, we have one founding principle, right? Yes. Which is we like kicking the shit out of kings. And, we've built our entire mythos as a country around that and some terrible other things that we tied to it. But really, the thing that the common beginning of America is, are you fucking sure you can do that? Are you really sure?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you're sure enough. And for us, this is built into our DNA as a country a little bit. So seeing the organic pushback and seeing things like, I'm a sick fuck. I watch C-SPAN. And so I was watching C-SPAN the other day when people were calling in, and someone called in and they said, well, under Biden, my insulin was $6 for 28 days. It's 80 now. And they're
Yikes.
starting, there's something, we can see it, right? Like
Yeah.
the conversation shifted back to reality
Mm-hmm.
in some places and in some pockets. Reality has outstripped the unreality machine that the Republicans have been aiming at us for 20 years. And material conditions are going to dictate how this goes now at some capacity. And they haven't had to deal with that because they've been
Well,
the insulate.
And to be clear, there is a specific executive order. I would have to look it up to go
Yes.
find it, but there is a specific executive order which canceled a cap on drug prices. So it's not some fever dream to say that, oh, well, it's just, Biden and Trump and you just can't tell the difference, or things change, or it's the
Right,
economy, or what. It's no, he
Absolutely.
signed an executive order and he caused this.
Well, and
And-
what's interesting is the caller literally says that their pharmacist told him it was because the cap had been rolled back by Trump. So
Well,
like,
and you've seen that too with like gas prices
Yeah.
going up and electrical going up, and the companies they know people are going to be pissed, and so they
Yeah.
have sent out those letters saying this has gone up 10% because of Trump, because
Yep.
of the tariffs, and
Yep.
more please, like keep doing it, because I mean, granted, it's not their fault, they don't want responsibility, but as much as we can pin it on him, we have to. It's not just things change, things are different. No, it's Trump did this.
no, and the more rocks we can hang around the neck of the movement, the harder it is for two things to happen: for them to move agilely to anticipate and try and counteract stuff against them, but it also makes it much more likely that people who, even though they may be conservatives and maybe Republicans, are going to start thinking outside of the, well, this is what we tell you and this is what you need to believe sphere. And once we start seeing that fully, and we're starting to, it's when this is going to get very hard for them to coalesce. And like seeing what the military and, military members are saying within like spaces like our army on Reddit, people know what this is. They're very much aware that Donald Trump and the Republicans are running a coup and are embracing anti-democratic and fascist policies, and so
And
just-
resegregation across
Yes.
the board. They
Yes.
fire the
That's
black
yes.
chairman of the Joint Chiefs,
Yeah.
and you have a quote from Pete Hegseth on a podcast in November, essentially saying he's got to be fired because he's black. Because maybe I don't know, but maybe he got the job because he's black. No evidence, nothing supporting that. Just, well, he's black. And Pete Hegseth thinks that black men cannot be qualified to have that job, so they fired him. Charles Brown, who was just fired as the chairman, he tried to make amends or play nice with the Trump administration. Whatever, he has his own reasons for that, but and I'm not even begrudging him that. He is qualified for the job, and the person they're replacing him with was retired and doesn't actually meet
Yeah.
the qualifications for the job. But
It's going to need
he
a congressional
tried
waiver to even do it.
exactly,
Which he'll
exactly,
get.
and Brown tried to smooth it over, which probably would have been the best thing for the country, but the Trump people didn't care. One, because he spoke out in support of Black Lives Matter, and two, and more importantly, because he's black.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah,
He's black.
and I think people need to get very much comfortable with that framing because it's the right one, right? Anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion, the actions that we're seeing right now, is a resegregation campaign.
Right,
An
right.
explicit movement to end civil rights in this country and move us back towards their ultimate goal, which is enslavement for a large portion of the minority population of this country. That's been their stated goal, depending on the group, for a number of years. And it seems that Trump and them have made this into their collective goal. And we're seeing it.
Yes.
Outside of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, we saw them fire the head of the Judge Advocate General Corps for a majority of the military and remove the only women from power within the Joint Chiefs structure and the high command staff. And so this is, both the naked racism and misogyny of fascism coming to bear, but also is part of a larger plan to make America white again. And these people have fully made that clear now. And I think that most Americans are starting to understand that this isn't fully what it appeared at first. And, for many of us who've studied this, who've worked with it, whether that's as a researcher, an academic, as a public speaker, whatever, it's somewhat maddening, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. They're getting it now, and that's all that matters. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't, well, you weren't here soon enough. It's, we got work to do to make sure this doesn't come to completion.
Well, that's exactly what their attacks on the Department of Education are.
Yes.
It is school choice is resegregation.
Yes.
They can't call it that, and they can't get that through the courts yet. But not yet. But yes, giving vouchers for private schools, for Christian schools. They're even trying to use taxpayer funds and redistribute that to Christian schools, which already don't pay taxes, which just sit with that for a minute. They don't pay taxes, but they're still going to get tax dollars. And that's happening right now, I believe, in Oklahoma. And I
believe that's correct.
Yeah. It's going to leave so many kids behind. It's going to make it easier for upper middle class kids to go to the private school of their choice. And it's going to be with largely, almost entirely, white students.
Yes.
And the black and brown kids are just going to be underfunded and forgotten. And, oh, by the way, Elon Musk has come through and cut as many programs as he can that could have helped those same kids who they're trying to take money away from get any sort of extra help or assistance, or their schools get the assistance they need to give them a proper education. This will help people who are already well off, and it will hurt those who aren't even more. And it is as close to straight up resegregation as they can possibly get.
Right. And this is all backdrop too, with an unfolding cultural genocide against LGBTQ plus folks. Mm-hmm. And so we're seeing both sides of this, right? Like there's the deeply fascist part going after trans folks and anyone who isn't straight. And that's hitting one pillar of public education and institutional power, while the other part is being used to resegregate completely based on race and sexual preference for this patriarchal vision. And like the Department of Education right now is one of the avenues that they have to get to solidify the power they're trying to gain so they can do other actions. And we have time to push it back. We have time to organize around it as a society. But again, they've been wargaming this for years to figure out maximal damage to allow for resegregation, to compel speech, a whole bunch of things. And we're starting to see, and people are starting to react to what that actually is, especially for people who just bought a bill of goods for 20 or 10 years and, may have been, okay with a level of like incivility that early on was kind of the hallmark of this new right. But, people stop, unfortunately, when it starts to hurt them personally. And we're starting to see that hurt seep in. So it's really interesting to see both the negative, but also that there is a reaction. Like we haven't lost this game yet because people literally do see it as a problem, even in the group that it voted this in.
Right. And we're seeing this, all over the country. We're seeing people rushing to like kind of comply with these things before they're actually being made to. We just saw this in one of the local school districts here, a pretty wealthy and liberal school district north of Seattle, the Edmonds district, decided to scrap its sexual harassment policies, references to gender identity, anything like that, even though, the school's superintendent for the state says that these dear colleague letters that are being sent out don't have the force of law. And there's a process if they want to cut your funding. But the school district's like, nope, we want to make sure that we don't catch hell from the media. They're worried about that. I mean, he said that out loud, and it's cool that he has, the honesty to say we don't want chums of TikTok to get up our shit about this, but it's, really setting a great example for the kids of how to take a hard stand on something that is unjust, right in the middle of Black History Month too. Pretty cool.
Good that's
job.
the thing, right? Like, I've talked about it before on here. Like, part of this is a social reproduction problem, right? Like, the right's reproducing a malign and authoritarian view of what social order is.
Mm-hmm.
Democracy, like the rule of law democracy folks, need to get the picture that they actually have to do the same thing. And it means not folding like a wet bag of cat shit when the least amount of wind blows against. And, some places are deciding to say, I'll see you in court. What we saw with Trump's exchange with the
Governor of Maine.
Yesterday is a good example that, like, you don't comply in advance and you tell them that, and you do basically force their hand, right? And like, it works for a lot of reasons, but one of them is literally you're showing that you stand up instead of comply. And that's really important for the social systems to continue to reproduce that standing up and that resistance.
Yeah. And that's what we need to see at this point. We need to see the people that we're seeing at the town halls. We need to see more of this. It's got to keep going. It's got to get bigger. And I think that practically every move they make is increasing the size of the protest.
Oh, yeah.
It's increasing the amount of people that are willing to come out into the streets and, show face and just absolutely show out against this thing. So.
Yeah. And they're losing momentum, right? Like, ideologically, they have momentum, but the more of this that happens and the more that people separate the politics, the horrifying things, and them, the more distance they create, the better, right? And the more people within communities that have traditionally voted Trump, the more that they see people are breaking away, we're probably going to see a larger breakaway happen, right? In certain areas where people do realize, like, we can still believe these things about the country. We can still, believe that we're conservatives, but we don't have to believe that specific vision of conservatism and fascism. The better chance we have. Like, I'm never going to be a conservative. I'm never going to be able to understand fully why people believe certain socially conservative things. But, being conservative is much different than being, well, we should gas these people, turn the border into a war zone, invade allies, murder people at home, and do the day of the road, right? And like, the more that contrast starts to come clear, people are going to freak out.
Well, I had a conversation about that with somebody not too long ago offline, where I postulate that we need to update our language because conservative hasn't been a fundamentally accurate word to describe what these people are in a generation. They're not conservatives. They are not anything resembling a conservative. They're a reactionary party.
Yes.
At best.
Yes.
They are authoritarians. They are any number of things that are not what we would think of as conservatives, but we're still using that conservative framing because we just haven't updated the way we refer to these things. And to some extent, they still think of themselves that way. But like, show me one issue that they are actually somewhat conservative on rather than just absolute outright reactionary.
Right.
It isn't there anymore.
No.
Yeah, well, and you've got Mitch McConnell retiring this week as just a reminder that the people who laid the groundwork for this they're gone. They're out. Exactly. They're too old.
Yep.
They're being primaried or pushed out because they offered any amount of resistance. I mean, a lot of those guys were gone in Trump's first term. But yeah, Mitch McConnell, I'm not sure how much he's even there at this point. I'm sure he's always going to, what part of his, dream and vision for the courts, it was realized. And I'm sure he's happy with the power that he held and the sway that he had in Washington. And yeah, Conservative Inc., well, this is what you gave us. And their time is past, but you laid the groundwork. You let Trump through the door. You didn't stop him. And this is where we are now. I can't, like, seeing McConnell retire, and he had that protest vote against RFK, and it of course came to nothing. And it is just, yeah, it was a clear sign that whatever is left of that wing of the party is gone. And the Senate was holding on much longer than the House did, but now it is MAGA. They're not conservatives, but the Republican Party, there is no extreme MAGA. There is no, center of the party that's going to do the right thing. It's just all of the leadership, all of the people who count. It's all MAGA.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
they've taken it completely over. That's where it is right now.
Exactly. I mean, and their insurgency against the party and the country is nearly complete, right? Like, they did the thing they set out to do. And, I think a whole bunch of people who think that this party was their granddaddy's Republican Party are suddenly having a moment of like, well, shit, my family farm is on the line, or shit, I can't get money to do payroll for part of my manufacturing business because we lost X amount of federal dollars. I mean, this is the thing that, like,
you still have a wing of vote. You're right. There's still enough people out there who are not super politically engaged, but who consider themselves Republicans, who still think this is the party of Reagan. And they're suddenly realizing that, oh shit,
this is not the party of Reagan. This
right.
is not Reagan anymore.
And that's the thing. Right?
Reagan was woke.
Yeah. Literally, like, that's what you see from a lot of this crowd now, right? And like, that's the thing. I think people have, missed that, like, that coalition, as much as I don't like that we're probably going to have to work with people who I fundamentally disagree on, is crucial to actually stopping this, right? If you can get Iowa and Illinois farmers and Southern, machine shop owners and suburban X, Y, and Z on the same page, you've got a block there that's pretty powerful, and not just in the sense of voting, but in that, like, their community in a lot of cases is going to look at them as members with high standing. And the more you have communities with people, that are seen as parts of the community starting to stand away from this, the more chance we have to mount sufficient local, state and federal pushback to avoid the worst possible outcomes, and probably avoid too some of the really negative, like, physical effects of if they push this thing too far and people decide they're going to fight back physically.
Right.
And that outcome, is not the outcome anyone wants for a lot of reasons. And there is, I think, a broad coalition that's going to open up here more clearly over the next little bit, but we're starting to see something really something special here and uniquely American, where it's not corporate led, where it's not being run by some super PAC. It's not, there's no Coke money turning out Tea Party propaganda to try and rile up a group that they target. This is very much people just saying enough is enough. No kings, no masters here. We're free.
You sure can't even accuse the Democrats of leading it.
No, you can't.
It definitely isn't that.
Honestly, I think that's good right now. As much as I wish the party was out there just like, we're going to carry, friggin' shields into battle.
Well,
and all that.
Well, they're not in power. They're doing everything they can. You've seen the coordinated messaging from Democrats of.
Oh, it's very coordinated.
Very coordinated. We're not in power.
Right.
We're doing everything we can, but we don't have any power.
No,
there's nothing we can do.
I think
I've also seen the protests at Hakeem Jeffries' book selling events in Chicago and New York.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm telling them this isn't the time, and they're right.
Well, and I think that's just it, right? Like, we're seeing something that isn't party based. This is an organic social movement, and it's really different. Like, I can't actually think outside of maybe 2008 where we've seen a non-right wing, non-AstroTurf enabled social movement break through to where, like, we're starting to see, CBS News articles that are like, What's going on? Why are people in the street? The Democrats aren't doing anything, but people are in the street. And it's really interesting to see, right? Because like it actually underlines how powerful we are right now in that like there is no coordination, right? There is no money. This is just the citizenry saying, no.
Like you said, they did the one thing that was the real absolute third rail of American politics. They went ahead and tried to restore a monarchy. That's the one thing that you probably just, no matter what, can't do. And they've made it clear that they want,
exactly.
Musk was never going to be president, so he bought one. And now that he's bought himself a president, he gets to do whatever he wants. No, I think that's where some lines have been drawn.
Yeah. No,
people finally have had enough.
But there are very few red lines for Americans as a collective. And I do think that like posting, it's good to be king and an imagery of Trump with a crown that's a visceral fucking reaction. I know I had one. I know other people who aren't nearly as engaged as I am messaged me and were like, yo, what the fuck is this? Does this guy actually believe he's king? And it's like, there are certain things like you can throw sig heils in America. You can talk about throwing people in concentration camps.
All of this is legal
in camps. And we've done it politically before. You know what we've never done before politically in this country is say, you know what? Maybe Britain was right and the monarchy was the correct answer. Because we've always known that the one thing that actually trumps our like the heart of white power in this country is the goddamn king.
Yeah.
There's one thing in this country that trumps the binding power of white supremacy, and that is literally that most Americans know enough history to be like, kick their ass. Fuck this noise.
I think the most important thing right now is to try and keep it to that.
Yeah.
Don't get sidetracked. Don't get drawn off into some other conversation about everything else that might be wrong. Right now, you have a very special and rare kind of energy in our country's history out there. Go with it.
Yeah.
This is absolutely a one issue campaign to a large extent. So go with it.
No things.
Well,
no
and
things.
Really, Trump is acting like a king. He is acting like he is the final say on everything. Congress has bent the knee and pretty much answers to his every whim. Meanwhile, they are fighting out things in court while threatening judges, while threatening the families of judges, while threatening to impeach judges. Now, we're not there yet. They're not going to pull that off yet.
Yeah.
But if he didn't think he was king, why is he acting like one? If he didn't think he had absolute power to do whatever the hell he wants, why does he keep doing it? And the longer it goes where no one actually stops him, the more empowered he's going to be to take bigger chunks of what used to be the checks and balances and just set them on fire.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And that's, that's the whole thing and why pushback is important. Because these people, when they take an inch, they take a mile. And we've seen it time and time again. And I think the cuts are coming in too deep, right? Like this is just, people aren't going to take this for very long. And that, that's a concern for me purely based on the utilitarian. Like that means that they are going to have to respond. If their actions are causing too much reaction, they're going to have to respond. At this point, though, the more pressure we apply, the more it makes it very clear that they are not acting constitutionally, legally, or within the bounds of social norms. And the more of a wedge we can drive that direction, the better, right? Like,
and to be clear, they are not planning on slowing down ever. And they are being very explicit and very clear about this, that, 100 days, it's been crazy. There's so much going on. And I think people naturally think that, those first 100 days are the time to get your agenda in, and then you hit cruise control.
No,
they are not doing that.
Gas pedal down. Gas pedal down. And
so we have to answer it. We have to see that and know what's coming, and we have to fight back.
We're starting to, thankfully.
America, I said it online and I've said it privately, America takes a lot of time. as a population to grow a consensus and then start to act. But God help you if you're in front of us and we start to act, because we're a sledgehammer. And
Yes.
that's both good and bad, right? Like, we've seen both. And if we can harness this for good, we're unstoppable. But, like, God help you if you're in the way.